I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house. I am very pleased to be able to talk about the recent Blu-ray release of the 1989 TV adaptation of Susan Hill's The Woman in Black. This was first broadcast on Christmas Eve in 1989 and only ever repeated once at Christmas in 1994. I saw neither of those, so I'd never seen this before. I'm filling up my Woman in Black bingo card nicely now. I still haven't read Susan Hill's novel, which seems like a horrific omission on my part, but now I've seen Woman in Black 89, Woman in Black 2012. I've seen the stage play. Oh, delicious. I think there are a couple of BBC radio adaptations that I haven't tracked down yet. I've got to say, this 1989 Woman in Black is really shoulder to shoulder with the play in terms of which adaptation I like best. I adore the fact that every version of The Woman in Black takes the basic setup and then spins off into its own unique ending. So if you've seen the play, you don't know how the 2012 film is going to end, and if you've only seen the 2012 film, you have no idea how this 1989 version is going to end. But the foundations, the setup, the main meat of the story is exactly the same. Very familiar. A young solicitor, Arthur Kipps, strangely Arthur Kidd in this version, is sent to a coastal English village of Crithin Gifford to settle the estate of the recently deceased widow, Mrs. Drablow, at her house, Eel Marsh House. Now, of course, anyone who's read or seen any kind of Dracula knows that if a young solicitor is sent off somewhere to do some dealings at the behest of one of his elderly partners in the firm, that ain't gonna end well. This version of the novel is adapted by Nigel Kneale, which is another reason I was so keen to get my hands on this Blu-ray. Nigel Kneale, of course, has got absolute form. He invented Professor Quatermass. He wrote the Stone Tape. John Carpenter was a huge fan of Nigel Kneale. Kneale wrote the first draft of Halloween 3 for him and then got a bit miffed when it got rewritten. John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness is an unabashed love letter to the work of Nigel Kneale. So you've got Susan Hill's relatively modern novel mining for all it's worth the English ghost story tradition, and you've got Nigel Kneale adapting that work. This is some kind of marriage made in heaven. I hadn't realised before I got it that this was a Christmas broadcast, so I was really pleased to see that it was following on in the sort of Christmas ghost story tradition of M.R. James himself, and also the BBC Ghost Stories for Christmas, which mainly adapted the ghost stories of M.R. James and played them around Christmas. We've recently got back into that. Mark Gatiss has been adapting more M.R. James stories in recent Christmases for us. I've done videos on all the BBC's Ghost Stories for Christmas, and I think ghosts and Christmas, thank you Charles Dickens, go together like turkey and stuffing. I'm not going to talk about the plot anymore. I want this to be as spoiler-free as possible for a very specific reason that I will call that moment. Before I got my order of this Blu-ray, I read a sort of oblique review of it that alluded enough to that moment that I knew while I was watching it that that moment was coming. So it was mildly spoiled for me. I knew what the setup of the scene was, the scenario. I knew where various characters were, and I wish I hadn't, because I will say this, even vaguely knowing that it was coming, that moment is still one of the most blood-chilling things I have seen in horror for quite a number of years. It is not often that something will happen on screen that will make me make a noise of revulsion and make me slightly recoil from the screen. And all of you horror fans, I know you know what I'm talking about. These moments so few and far between are what we crave, these little hits of pure horror, and this version of The Woman in Black has it. Now, I didn't realise until I'd seen the whole thing that there's actually an option on here to watch the film uninterrupted in a 16:9 letterbox ratio, and I'm really glad I didn't know that, because I just went with the default old television sort of boxy 4:3 aspect ratio with the black bars down the side that also included the title cards leading into and out of the ad breaks. So straight away I was taken back to the time of TV gone by, and the story that they're telling accomplishes such a great evocation of the Edwardian, I think, is setting of the story. I mean, the cars, the buses, the steam trains, the costume design, everything is there. Really rich, really draws you into that world. And I found myself wondering why it is that an 80s TV show might seem more authentically Edwardian, does that sound crazy, than a multi-million pound 2012 movie, a feature film. And I wonder if perhaps it's because a TV film that's 30 plus years old now has that patina of something from a bygone era to it already, which just feeds into this notion of you're watching an artifact from the past, about the past. If that's the case, then that sort of synergy of nostalgia married to a period piece just absolutely works wonderfully. In the videos where I was talking about the BBC Ghost Stories for Christmas, one of the things I kept banging on about was location, 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 like I was some kind of spivvy estate agent. But certainly if you're telling an English ghost story, your location scout is worth their weight in gold if they can find you the right church, the right graveyard, the right old house. And this adaptation has that kind of atmosphere in spades, just real locations in England that are just dripping with atmosphere and history. You don't have to dress any of the outsides of these buildings, they're just there. And I'll say this as well, for a story that relies very heavily on there being a tidal causeway between Crythin Gifford and Eel Marsh House, so that at certain times of the day, and especially the night, the house is inaccessible. It was wonderful to see them filming at an actual causeway. Adrian Rawlins is a great lead as Arthur Kidd. He's innocent and eager enough without being annoying that you genuinely want him to succeed in a situation where he has been thrown like a sacrifice into the middle of something that everyone else understands more than him, into the centre of a danger that everyone else knows about, of which he is absolutely unaware. You are completely rooting for him. So trivia time, Adrian Rawlins plays Harry Potter's father in a couple of the Harry Potter movies, and Harry Potter himself was in the big movie adaptation of that. And a nice little touch, they get Adrian Rawlins back to play a part in Woman in Black. What's it called? Angel of Death. I've not seen this. Put it this way, I liked Woman in Black 1989 so much that I ordered the 2 Woman in Black movies. I've seen this, not seen this. I just wanted more Woman in Black. The woman herself is played by Pauline Moran. Everything you want from a malevolent English ghost. She's for the most part silent, for the most part still, but what an effect that has. I think each time you see her, she gets greyer and greyer, more pallid, more corpse-like, and for the most part she's just stood silent, a silhouette. And strangely, the silhouette of her moves further and further away, sort of a middle ground, background, far background. The further away from the camera she gets in these scenes, the scarier she becomes to me. You start scanning the frame to see if she's anywhere in the background. Really chilling ghost. And as a vengeful female spirit, she shares absolutely a lineage with the famous Onryu from J-horror, Sadako from Ring, and Kayako from Ju-on the Grudge. I think those two ladies would be proud to call her auntie. The whole endeavour has a sense of class to it. There are no scare chords. There's long sections with no music at all. This kind of restraint is something modern horror has in very short supply. So in summation, if you're a fan of the BBC Ghost Stories for Christmas or M.R. James style ghost stories, indeed the stories of M.R. James himself, or if you're a fan of the 2012 Hammer movie or the Daniel Radcliffe movie, The Woman in Black, I really think you'd enjoy this. Or if you want another one of those moments, a moment in horror that I think could comfortably stand shoulder to shoulder with Sadako coming out of the television screen, or one of the Glick boys hovering outside a bedroom window in Toby Hooper's Salem's Lot, I strongly recommend The Woman in Black from 1989. Now, I don't often do this, in fact I never do this, but there's a relatively new horror website focusing on UK horror called Horrified that recently ran an excellent article on The Woman in Black that is far more scholarly and erudite than I could ever hope to imagine. I will link to the article below, and if you like that, you can find the author on Twitter @ScaredSheepless, and through that you can find links to her other reviews. I think I'm not getting paid to say this. I just think pay it forward. She writes some really good and interesting stuff. So if you've enjoyed me going about an excellent ghost story, follow that link and read some more worthwhile stuff about it.